Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going kind of hyper-local in a way. We're going to be looking at a historic home renovation project right here in Baltimore.
Oh, cool.
And we've got some really interesting source material to work with.
Awesome.
So we've got like a Maryland Historical Trust application
Okay.
for 901 North Port Street.
All right.
And it's got everything.
Cool.
Like, we've got photos, we've got floor plans, and even cost breakdowns.
Wow. So we're like really getting into the weeds of this project.
Yeah, exactly. Like imagine you're peeking into someone's project folder and seeing all the nitty-gritty details.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about these deep dives. It's not just like a theoretical case study,
Yeah,
you know? We're seeing how this stuff actually plays out in the real world.
exactly. And that's what we're going to try to do today is kind of like break down, the scope of this project, like how much did it cost? What
Yeah.
kind of work did they do? And, what were the steps involved in applying for these historical preservation tax credits?
Awesome. Yeah. It's a really fascinating look at how these programs work.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
This property at 901 North Port Street,
Mm.
it's a project by Eager Street Development 28 LLC.
Okay.
And the project looks like it got started in June of 2017.
All right.
And then they submitted their application for certification in January of 2018, January 9th, 2018.
Okay.
And you know what's really cool is that we actually have the application with handwritten notes on it.
Oh,
So
wow.
you really get that sense of like the real people behind this paperwork.
I love those little glimpses behind the scenes, just like those personal touches.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, speaking of getting personal, let's talk money.
Okay, let's do it.
So the total cost for this rehab came out to $257,902.
Cha-cha.
But there's a detail that kind of jumped out at me.
Oh, okay.
It says that they specifically excluded new construction costs.
Right.
So why is that distinction so important?
Well, I think that exclusion is really important because it gets to the heart of what the historical tax credit program is all about, which is really preserving the existing historical elements of a building.
Right.
The program's not really designed to incentivize you to add on a whole new addition or build something totally new.
Gotcha.
It's really about rehabilitating what's already there.
Okay.
So in this case, only the expenses related to restoring the existing structure were eligible for the tax credit.
Okay, so like what was that number?
So the total eligible expenses for this project were $187,712.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's what the tax credit will be calculated on.
So they could get 20% of that back,
Now,
potentially.
that's a pretty big chunk of change.
That is, yeah. Wow. Okay, well, now I'm really curious to see like what those expenses actually covered.
Yeah, me too. It's almost like we get to go on a virtual tour through a spreadsheet.
I love it.
All right, so why don't we start in the kitchen?
Okay, let's go to the kitchen.
Under kitchen cabinets, we see $3,250.
Okay, $3,250 for kitchen cabinets. That makes me wonder, were these like custom-made cabinets? Like chosen for their historical accuracy
That's a great question.
to really match the home's original style.
Yeah, choosing historically accurate features is a huge part of these projects.
Right.
And custom cabinets can definitely be a big factor in achieving that authentic look.
Hmm.
Maybe they had to source special materials or find craftspeople who could replicate what would have been used back when the house was built.
I'm fascinated by how these seemingly small choices like really add up to create that overall historical feel.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, speaking of choices, shower fixtures clock in at $600.
Okay.
So does that price point suggest a budget-conscious decision? Or
Hmm.
maybe they were trying to like balance modern functionality with those historical aesthetics.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on a key challenge in historical renovation, right?
Yeah.
Which is finding that sweet spot between preservation and modern living.
Mm-hmm.
It's very likely that they were considering both the budget and the historical appropriateness when making their choices.
Right.
Maybe they opted for fixtures that had a vintage look,
Ah,
but also incorporated modern plumbing for efficiency.
I can picture it now.
Yeah.
Okay, one more line item before we move on. Appliances at $1,700.
Right.
So I wonder, did this cover like a full set of appliances for the kitchen? And did they go for modern appliances? Or did they try to find vintage pieces that would blend in seamlessly with the rest of the house?
I'm curious about that too. You know, imagine the difference between like a sleek stainless steel refrigerator and a vintage style model.
Right.
It would totally change the feel of the kitchen.
Yeah, and think about like the challenges of integrating those appliances too, like making sure they meet modern building codes but still fit within that historical framework of the space.
Okay, now I'm really eager to see these choices come to life in the actual house.
Me too.
So luckily we have floor plans. We've got these numbered photos. Looks like we're about to step through the front door ourselves.
Yeah, let's do it. We can use these photos as our guide and kind of walk room by room, almost like we're on a house tour.
I love it. Perfect. And you, our listener, can follow along using the floor plans and photos that we've got on the website.
So imagine yourself stepping inside 901 North Port Street with us.
All right, so photo number 1 gives us a really cool before and after comparison.
Okay.
It's the facade of the house before and after they tackled that formstone removal and repainting.
Wait, back up a sec. Formstone. What exactly is formstone? I mean, I know what it is, but for those of us who might not be familiar with this Baltimore staple.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
So formstone was this really popular exterior cladding material
Okay.
that was used a lot in the mid-20th century.
All right.
You can think of it as like an artificial stone veneer,
Okay.
and people would often apply it over the original brick facades of their houses,
Right.
sometimes covering up really beautiful architectural details.
Interesting.
Yeah, so removing the formstone was like a key step in this renovation
Gotcha.
to kind of reveal the home's original beauty and character.
Right.
You can really see the difference in the photo.
Yeah.
Like the house looks so much brighter and more inviting after that formstone came down.
Yeah, it's like the house can finally breathe again. Okay, I'm already loving this transformation.
Me too.
Let's move on to photo 6,
Okay.
which shows this replicated wood transom sash above the entry door.
Ooh, nice.
So can you break down what a transom sash is and why replicating it would be important in a historic renovation?
Sure. So a transom sash is that horizontal window that you often see above doorways,
Okay.
especially in older homes.
Right.
And they were originally designed to allow for ventilation and light even when the door was closed.
No, that's smart.
Yeah, pretty cool, right?
Uh,
And in a historic renovation, replicating this detail shows a real commitment to historical accuracy, even down to those smaller elements.
It's all about the details.
Exactly. They all add up.
All right, well, let's step inside now.
Okay.
Photo 13 brings us to the living room.
Right.
And this one's particularly interesting because it features both the original staircase and a new one.
Oh, wow. That is interesting.
So this is where that excluding new construction costs detail comes into play, right?
Exactly. The new staircase wouldn't be eligible for the tax credit because it's not restoring an existing element.
Right.
But the original staircase, that's a different story.
Okay.
Preserving and restoring those original features is central to qualifying for the tax credit.
It's like a puzzle figuring out what qualifies and what doesn't.
Yeah, it can be.
Okay, well, before we get too lost in the paperwork, I want to point out one more photo.
Okay.
Photo 29.
Right.
It shows a pyramid-style wire glass skylight in the second floor hallway.
Cool.
And it's described as typical of the neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
So I just love that those little details, those quirks that really make a house feel authentically historic.
Yeah, they absolutely do. It's like a fingerprint, something unique to that particular place and time.
Mm.
And preserving those details is really crucial to maintaining the home's character and historical significance.
Okay, well, speaking of preservation, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the documentation the homeowner needed to submit. So we've got the completed forms with those detailed descriptions of the work.
Right.
We've got the photos that we've been exploring.
Mm-hmm.
And we've even got letters from the contractors and architects confirming their fees.
Wow.
It seems like a pretty thorough process.
It is. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Real.
This application is reviewed very carefully
Right.
to make sure that every aspect aligns with the standards for historical rehabilitation.
Which makes sense. I mean, the Maryland Historical Trust wants to make sure that these tax credits are being used to genuinely preserve and revitalize historic properties.
Exactly. It's not just about giving a house a quick makeover.
Right.
This is about preserving a piece of history.
So this isn't just about aesthetics. It's about preserving a piece of Baltimore's history for future generations.
Precisely. It's about recognizing the value of these older homes and understanding the importance of preserving our architectural heritage.
I think we've covered a lot of ground here in part one.
Yeah, we have.
We've gotten a taste of the project scope, the financial investment, and we've even peeked inside through those photos, but there's still so much more to explore.
Definitely.
So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the details of this fascinating renovation journey. All right, so we're back, and we're ready to kind of continue our virtual tour of 901 North Port Street.
Okay.
I'm picturing those original brick foundation walls and remnants of a coal chute you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
It's like stepping back in time.
It really is. And, as we move up to the first floor,
Okay.
just imagine like walking through that front door with that replicated transom sash we talked about, stepping into that living room that we saw in photo 13.
Right.
Remember those two staircases?
Yes, the original and the new one.
Exactly. The original one gracefully winding its way upstairs,
Yeah.
and then the new one seamlessly blending in modern functionality with the home's historical character.
I'm curious what factors might have led them to add that new staircase. Was it purely for practicality? Or could it have been like a requirement to meet modern building codes?
Yeah, it's likely a combination of both.
Okay.
Older homes weren't always designed with today's safety standards in mind.
Right.
So a new staircase might have been necessary to meet current code requirements for things like stair width, railing height, fire safety.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
It's a great example of how these renovations often involve like finding those creative solutions to balance preservation with modern needs.
absolutely.
Okay, well, speaking of modern needs, let's head into the dining room, which is located just beyond the living room.
Okay.
I'm picturing that cozy dinner party we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
with the aroma of delicious food wafting in from the kitchen.
Ooh, yes.
Ah, the kitchen. I'm still wondering about those $3,250 kitchen cabinets.
Right.
What clues might those cabinets offer about the overall approach to this renovation?
Hmm. Well, the choice of kitchen cabinets can be incredibly revealing in a historical renovation.
Okay.
Did they go for a completely modern look? Or did they strive for a style that complements the home's historical era?
Mm-hmm.
Were those cabinets painstakingly chosen to replicate the look and feel of the originals?
Yeah,
Or were they a more modern interpretation?
right.
The answer to that question really speaks volumes about their commitment to historical accuracy.
And let's not forget about those appliances for $1,700.
Right. The appliances.
Did they opt for vintage pieces to enhance that historic charm?
Yeah.
Or did they prioritize modern efficiency?
That's a fascinating dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah,
Imagine the challenge of finding vintage appliances that are both functional and safe to use in a modern home.
right.
It might have required sourcing from specialized dealers or even restoring antique pieces.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, speaking of unique features, we can't forget that pyramid-style wire glass skylight we saw in photo 29.
Right.
It's described as typical of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So what does that tell us about the architectural history of this area?
Well, it suggests that this particular style of skylight was a common architectural element in Baltimore row houses,
Okay.
built during a specific period.
Right.
These details weren't just random choices. They were often dictated by, trends, building codes, available materials of the time.
Right.
So preserving these features really helps us to understand the evolution of architectural styles and how they reflect the history of a neighborhood.
It's like each house holds a piece of the neighborhood's story.
Exactly. And, while we're on the subject of details,
Uh-huh.
we can't forget about those $600 shower fixtures we were curious about.
Right.
Did they go for sleek and modern or something with a more vintage feel?
It just occurred to me that even something as seemingly mundane as shower fixtures can be a statement piece in a historic renovation.
Oh, for sure.
It's all about those choices, big and small, that contribute to the overall narrative of the house.
You're so right. Every detail plays a role.
All right, well, let's keep moving. As we head up to the second floor, I want you to keep in mind those bedrooms, the bathroom, and that bonus space,
Yeah,
which could be like a den or an office.
right.
Imagine how they might have balanced functionality with historical authenticity in these more private spaces.
Hmm. I'm picturing cozy bedrooms with restored fireplaces.
Yeah.
Perhaps even some original wallpaper peeking out from behind the fresh paint.
Ooh, I love
Yeah.
that. And that bonus space, what a perfect spot for a home office with a view of the cityscape.
Yes. And don't forget about that exterior transformation.
Oh, right.
Remember photo one, that dramatic before and after of the facade after the formstone removal and repainting?
Yeah.
It really highlights the impact of these renovations, not just on the individual homeowner, but on the entire streetscape.
It's like giving the house a new lease on life, allowing it to shine again.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And, the homeowner invested a significant amount of money in this transformation.
Right. 257,902 times.
Yes. And by utilizing the Maryland Historical Trust Homeowner Rehabilitation Tax Credit Program, they could potentially receive a significant portion of that investment back.
That's amazing. I'm curious, what were the fees associated with, like, the construction and architectural expertise?
Sure. So the application shows that Eager Street Development paid $208,650 to Two Bulls Construction for their work on the project.
Okay.
And additionally, they paid $5,785 to Trace Architects for the architectural plans.
So those professional fees were a considerable part of the project cost.
They were. And it highlights the importance of working with qualified professionals who understand the nuances of historical renovation.
Right.
It's not just about construction, it's about preservation research
Yeah.
and a deep respect for the historical integrity of the building.
And that's where those historical tax credits can make such a huge difference, right?
Exactly.
By offsetting some of those costs, they make it more feasible for homeowners to invest in these important preservation projects.
It's a win-win for the homeowner and for the community.
All right, so now we're getting down to the financial nitty-gritty.
Let's do it.
Remember how the application excluded new construction costs from the total eligible expenses,
Right.
which came to $187,712.
That's right.
So with the tax credit calculated at 20% of those eligible expenses, this project could potentially receive a tax credit of
Roll, please.
$37,542.40.
Wow. That is a significant chunk of change.
It really demonstrates the financial incentive for choosing preservation over demolition.
It does. And it really underscores the value that the Maryland Historical Trust places on preserving these historic gems.
But of course, to qualify for those credits, the project has to meet those rigorous historical rehabilitation standards.
Absolutely. It's not just about slapping on a fresh coat of paint and calling it a day.
Right.
These renovations require careful planning, meticulous attention to detail, and a deep understanding of the historical context of the building.
And probably a good dose of patience.
Probably.
I imagine there were plenty of unexpected challenges and surprises along the way.
I'm sure there were. But as we can see from the results at 901 North Port Street, the journey is worth it.
You know, as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive, I keep coming back to photo 13.
Yeah.
The living room with those two staircases.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful image. It really captures both the home's history and its revitalized future.
I agree. It's a beautiful example of how historical renovation can breathe new life into a space while still honoring its past.
And it makes me wonder about the stories these houses hold.
Yeah.
The families who lived there, the lives they built, the memories they made.
It's fascinating to think about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Each house is like a time capsule filled with layers of history just waiting to be uncovered.
And that's what makes historical preservation so important. It's not just about bricks and mortar. It's about connecting with our past and understanding how it shapes our present.
Yeah, it really makes you think about like the craftsmanship
Right.
and the care that went into building these homes back then.
Absolutely. You know, they weren't just houses.
They were works of art in their own way.
Yeah. And that's what the Maryland Historical Trust is working so hard to protect. They're not just handing out these tax credits randomly.
Right.
You know, they're carefully evaluating each project to ensure that it meets the highest standards of historical preservation.
They're acting as stewards, making sure these renovations are done with sensitivity and respect for the home's history.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture,
Okay.
it's about more than just preserving the physical structure of a building.
Right.
It's also about honoring the craftsmanship and the design intent of the original builder.
Exactly.
And that brings us back to you, our listener.
Okay.
So we've walked you through the costs, the details, the photos. We even delved into that application process. But what does all of this mean for you?
That's a great question. Does seeing this specific example change how you view those older homes in your own neighborhood? Maybe you've walked past them 100 times without giving them a second thought. But now do you see them with a fresh perspective?
Perhaps you're noticing details that you never paid attention to before.
Right.
Like those intricate cornices, the unique window styles, even the way the bricks are laid.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, it sparks a little curiosity within you.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered what it would be like to take on a project like this yourself?
Oh, wow.
Imagine breathing new life into a historic home, adding your own chapter to its story.
It's definitely a commitment. But as we've seen with 901 North Port Street, it can be incredibly rewarding.
It can. And not just financially, thanks to those tax credits,
Right.
but also personally.
Yeah.
There's a special kind of satisfaction that comes from preserving a piece of the past, knowing that you've played a role in keeping history alive.
Imagine the sense of accomplishment standing back and admiring that finished product.
Yeah.
Knowing that you helped to save a piece of Baltimore's architectural heritage.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll be deep diving into your historic home renovation project.
Oh, that's a great point.
That would be really fascinating.
We'd love to hear from our listeners who are passionate about historic preservation.
Yeah.
What projects are you working on? What challenges have you faced? What advice would you give to others who are considering a similar journey?
We're all part of this larger story of preservation.
Right.
And sharing those experiences can really inspire and educate others.
We hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for the world of historic home renovation.
Me too.
It's more than just construction.
Right.
It's about respecting the past, embracing the present, and building a future where history and progress can coexist beautifully.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating deep dive.